Hi, guys, and welcome. This is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, artist, memoir writer, bipolar psychiatric survivor, and your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, the place that offers an alternative perspective on mental illness, highlighting creativity, non-conventional healing, and breaking on through to the other side. If you are ready for a new narrative on the mental realm that celebrates crazy and cool without penalty, then Not As Crazy As You Think is for you. Hello, this is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. I'd like to welcome our guest for today. Her name is Amy Begel, who is a co-author of the book Diagnosis Human: How Unlocking Hidden Relationship Patterns Can Transform and Heal Our Partners, Our Children, Ourselves, which is a book of family therapy case stories. She's a family therapist who trained with one of the creators of family therapy, Dr. Salvador Minuchin. Amy is on the teaching faculty of the Department of Family Practice, the Institute for Family Health at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City. She maintains a private practice in New York and New Jersey and specializes in family systems medicine, which refers to the interplay between relational dynamics, health, and illness. As senior faculty at the Minuchin Center for over 15 years, she developed and conducted family therapy training for the Brooklyn Bureau of Community Services, a nonprofit organization serving marginalized families in New York. She has also conducted extensive training with various child guidance and mental health agencies nationally and internationally. She has contributed numerous articles to HuffPost.com and MadInAmerica.com. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the theme of your book, written with your co-author, David Keith, is that many symptoms or problems that arise in mental distress are treated as individual issues, but are in fact part of interpersonal dynamics. So this is an unconventional approach today. It may not have been so unconventional in the past, but this is something that I think is so needed in this kind of paradigm shift. I feel like a lot of this field is partaking in. So how are symptoms of mental distress created by disturbing relationships or life situations as opposed to problematic brains?
Oh, so it's such a big question. Maybe I can just create a little context because, yes, I call myself a family therapist. I am a family therapist. People are like, what's that? What's family therapy? Nobody really knows about it anymore. Really, people don't practice it for the most part. This way of thinking has been marginalized by the pharmaceutical industry and the coalition between academic psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry. I could talk for a long time about that. But so if I could just give you a little context about the person that I trained with, somebody named Sal Minuchin. It was a democratic thing. Everybody called him Sal, even though he was a legendary child psychiatrist. So just to take us back in time a little bit, the 60s and 70s and even 50s a little bit were a very dynamic time in the world of psychotherapy. It was, and also in the cultural context, in America, status quos were being challenged everywhere. Male-female dynamics, Black power was on the ascendancy, the power of, white people, all imbalances of power, unjust imbalances of power were being challenged everywhere. It was a very turbulent time, a very creative time, a very dynamic time. And it was in this period that family therapy was born. And family therapy was also part of at the time, there was also the social psychiatry movement. I don't know if you know about that, but there were groups of people all over the country, and they created like the Soteria House, places where they basically treated mentally ill people as if they were healthy.
Yeah.
That's also a strong component in family therapy. So it was a very, we don't call it social justice, but it was very much embedded in power to the people. And and family therapy was very much a part of that movement. And then what happened and Robert Whitaker talks about this in his book Anatomy of an Epidemic, and he talks about how in the early 80s, academic psychiatry was really worried because of all these social justice movements, because of family therapy, et cetera, et cetera. And they thought that maybe they'd become extinct because, they were the only ones who had the power to write prescriptions, blah, blah, blah. And the drugs had fallen in disrepute. Valium, all the books and the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
There was a very famous book at the time called The Myth of Mental Illness by Thomas Zaz, who basically talked about psychiatry as a tool of social control. So on so many levels, psychiatry was really threatened. And then a Prozac came on the market. And Prozac had fewer side effects. And basically the academic psychiatry formed a coalition with the drug companies, and they said this is a great opportunity for us, they said. And psychiatry saw a way to redeem itself and gain power, and they wanted to be treated like real doctors, with measurable measurable ways of looking at illness. So they market, that's where the whole chemical imbalance thing came into being. Somebody to read about that is Marcia Angel, who's wonderful. Marcia Angel was the first female editor of New England Journal of Medicine. And she's written some great books about the drug companies. And she wrote a wonderful article in the New York Review of Books about how chemical imbalance came to be.
Nice.
She's particularly scathing about psychiatry, but anyhow, it's a flimsy, there's nothing to it. That's a long way of saying there's nothing to it. There was a made up idea.
Right.
But psychiatry saw it as really a great opportunity to redeem themselves, to gain power, to gain, financial, everything. And so it was in that context that the biological model of psychiatry was born.
Yeah.
This came about in the late 80s, something like that, 90s. And then it just has gathered steam ever since. And now all of our, all of the research money, it's so distressing to me. All of the research money, all of the everything is going into the brain.
Yep.
And what I want to say is what was happening in family therapy at the time, there was research, very dynamic research and clinical work going on all over the world. There was a fabulous group in Italy, the Milano group, who were really looking at and studying how relational dynamics contributed to symptoms that showed up in one person, or what that was about. And all kinds of clinicians all over the world. Virginia Satir, my co-author, worked for many years with Carl Whitaker, who wrote the book The Family Crucible. I highly recommend to your readers. It was written, like our book, it was written for civilians. It was written for the public. And it's a story of his treatment of one family. It was a wonderful book. So Carl was, doing his work in Wisconsin. My teacher, Sal Minuchin, was doing most of his work in Philadelphia Child Guidance. Virginia Satir was in California. It was super dynamic. There were Jay Haley was in Washington, D.C. Anyhow, it was really dynamic. And none of the findings have ever been proven wrong. It's just that they were marginalized. And I have a little interesting anecdote. So I was in psychoanalysis in my 20s with somebody named Alan Francis. And
Yes.
I call him Dr. Do you know him?
Yeah. Wow. It was the Alan Francis?
It's the Alan Francis.
Wow.
I saw the Alan Francis this summer. I went to visit him.
Oh, nice.
So he was my analyst in my 20s.
Wow.
And he was in training analyst. And I after I wrote the book, I contacted him. And it's interesting because he wrote back to me immediately, and he was so worried that he had somehow damaged me by the psychoanalytic model that, that he had, conducted with me.
Yeah.
He was so worried about it. And I told him, I said, I'm okay. I'm having a good life. I'm happy. I'm, well, everything's good. But it was interesting that he felt so guilty. And his teacher was actually the analyst who was Joan Didion's analyst. If you read that book recently, I can't remember his name, but he was a big guy in the field.
Hmm.
Anyhow, and the model was basically the analyst was not supposed to show that he or she was human. That was kind of it.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so he was so apologetic. So I went to see him this summer. My husband and I visited him and his wife. We had lunch. It
Wonderful.
was a wonderful lunch, and we were talking a lot. And he read my book. He loved it. And I asked him, since he was the chair of the DSM-3, which was, very active in marginalizing everything that had been learned about relationships.
Yes.
It was left out completely of DSM-3. And he and I talked about it. And of course, he has a lot of regret about it, which I
Yeah.
think you know. And he said at the time he knew Sal, my teacher. I mean, he didn't know him personally, but he knew his work very well. He loved, Carl Whitaker. He really admired and respected the family therapist. And his idea in DSM was to present different models of treating these, mental disturbances, mental distress, different models. And he was overruled in the task force. I mean, he didn't present himself as a victim this way. He didn't fight for it. But
Yes.
that was it, but he did always respect, admire the interpersonal framework for
Hmm.
looking at mental distress. He knew about it. He had, he had full respect for it, and he wanted to include it, and it didn't get included. And the rest is history.
Yes, absolutely. Now he was on the DSM-4, right? He was a
The
force
DSM
with,
three. He was the
oh,
chair.
he's three.
He might have been also on DSM-4, but DSM-3 was the breakthrough DSM.
That was when they really leaned on the full biomedical approach.
That was the thing.
And they
That was
removed context.
Yeah. Oh, context has nothing to do. No,
Yeah.
context would not see the light of day. No, that was the beginning of the biological model. I mean, it has increased since then. I think what DSM-3 was published in the 80s. I think late
1980.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so 19. So he was the chair of that task force. He might have been on DSM-4 also, but three was really kind of the breakthrough, with reframing, uh, not only as a brain model, but from my perspective, as a purely individual model.
Yes.
The idea that mental distress is not connected to the dynamics that we inhabit,
Yes.
which was everything that had been happening in family therapy that was really exciting, dynamic, well respected. There was a lot of energy around it, but it was not tied to the drug companies. It was not lucrative. There was no money to be made. It was a humanistic model,
Yes.
and there are still those of us who practice that way. The reason I wrote the book is nobody, well, I don't want to say nobody, very few people know what I learned in
Yes.
my training with Sal, how I practice. I teach in family medicine. I call them my little family doctors. And they're wonderful. They're all social justice warriors,
Yeah.
but their mental health training is exclusively individual, kind of brain based, executive functioning, and even this whole CBT thing. I won't get into it, but it's all related to. There's no understanding that distress is interpersonal.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just
That's a
wanted,
long way of saying
well,
it. Yeah,
firstly, thank you because
yeah.
you actually answered a couple of questions I had laid out beforehand
Okay.
because this is really, I think, the crux of it, where it went wrong. When I came into the system, and not, I didn't want to come into the system. Like this was, I had a big, big, big trauma where I almost lost my life in India.
Oh my
So when I
God.
came home, it was like
Oh
I
my
was just
God.
really needing someone to help me through the
Totally.
trauma. And they didn't
Totally.
even look at it. And they, right away figured out that there was something wrong with my brain or in their
She's
mind.
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that one of the reasons why I ran off to India is because, I wanted to learn something that it
Mhm.
wasn't being discovered in my own family dynamic. I
Mhm.
always felt that there was an issue with my family dynamic, a
Mhm.
lot of dysfunction there. They
Yeah,
were, I come from an immigrant family, so that's always a level of stress,
definitely.
financial and,
Definitely.
social fabric.
Yeah.
And the interesting part was, I remember the first time I was hospitalized, when after my breakdown, after I was like, oh my gosh, from the trauma, and I basically was like, wow, maybe this is a chance for and me not being, I was already 22 years old, so I had like taken psychology classes, I had
Mm-hmm.
like graduated already from college,
Mm-hmm.
like my
But still
understanding of,
very young.
yeah,
Still
but
very
still very
young. Yeah.
young,
Mm-hmm.
but savvy enough to know that, yeah, my family needs a little therapy, you know?
Mm,
And that was never something that my parents worked out. They carried their own traumas, into
definitely.
their projection of the onto the child.
Definitely.
And I was definitely the scapegoat, like everything that you bring
Oh,
up. And it was just very interesting because I remember saying to the first person that dealt with me, the psychiatrist, is, I think I need a good dose of family therapy. I remember that coming out of my mouth. And she
wow.
looked at me and she goes, your family is not the one with the problem. You are the one with the problem. And I was like,
You're breaking my heart here. I'm
yeah.
telling you.
And from that moment
Wow.
forward, I said, there's something wrong with this system here. Because
Right.
I'm not to say that I am, completely, not without
Good for
fault,
you.
but
Hmm.
that wasn't what was happening. And so, anyway, going
I want to say
into,
that's a sign of your health. Sorry to interrupt. That's a
thank
sign of
you.
your health that you
Thank you.
actually noticed, that you knew that there was something wrong, and
Yeah.
that you kind of owned that thing, that there's something wrong with my family's struggling, and I'm,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. I'm
And
responding to that.
you mentioned that there's often a person in a family dynamic that kind of gets tapped as the scapegoat because there's unresolved issues in a family. So you've come across this dynamic a lot, I'm assuming.
All the time.
So tell
So
us a little bit about that.
all the time. So I want to say, my the scapegoat is often the healthiest one in the family.
I just
Eh,
love this because it's just making me feel so grounded right now to hear this
oh,
from a professional.
all the time. And
Mm.
that's what our book. This is why we wrote the book, because we
Yeah.
wanted civilians to know what we know.
Yes.
And my buddy knows it too. So my co-author, I just want to say the reason David Keith is not here, he passed away about a year and a
Oh,
half
I'm so
ago.
sorry.
He was an elderly guy, but not that elder. Anyhow, he had a hard thing. Anyhow, but he was. I learned a lot from him. He was a brilliant clinician.
Hmm.
He was a child psychiatrist who did not use medications because he saw families. So
Yes.
he was my soul mate
Mm.
professionally. Anyhow, so he talked a lot about this also. When I say the scapegoat is often the healthiest one in the family, the book has a lot of stories. I mean, I could recap, one or two if you want.
Hmm.
But the scapegoat is usually the person. So this is what I would say, especially when you see a young person with behavior issues,
Yes.
acting out, maybe defiance, depression, some version of of upset that is manifesting either outward or inward.
Hmm.
That it seems to be having a so-called disturbing effect on the family. Usually, what that person is seeing and experiencing are what I think of as kind of energetic imbalances in the family,
Mm.
where perhaps one person doesn't have a voice,
Mm.
one parent is too strong, one parent is too weak, if I can use that term. There's some kind of energetic imbalance.
Yeah.
Perhaps a parent is depressed. There may be an alcoholic parent. There's some kind of imbalance, and usually it's related to conflict that gets suppressed.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of if we want to really get to the core of what it is about, usually there's some kind of conflict between the parents that is not being addressed, acknowledged, and dealt with. And it
Yes.
gets pushed beneath the surface, and it shows up in one child often who may be depressed, anxious, acting out, defiant, some version of that. But really, what they're doing is they're experiencing the pain that
Yeah.
is in the what we would call the parental subsystem or the marriage. They would experience the pain that is
Mm.
happening between the parents and in the family that nobody is talking about. It's unacknowledged, it's unexpressed, and it's
Yes.
most definitely unresolved. And that sensitive person on some level is trying to call attention to it.
Yes.
I see it all the time. I just a brief vignette. I had a family recently where the 13-year-old, I think it's 14-year-old young man was really, sort of acting out with his mother, sort of angrily, even cursing her a little bit, really, aggressive toward her. When I saw the family, the father has no voice.
Hmm.
And I said to the family, the father is afraid of the mother.
Yeah.
And the mother is she's a very kind of linear, strong, not really strong, rigid person, linear, doesn't really have much humor or imagination, and doesn't really want to hear anything that she doesn't want to hear. It's just a very encapsulated thing. And the father is more, in this case, the father is more kind of sensitive, intuitive, blah, blah, blah. The mother does not want to hear the father's voice.
Hmm.
He's been trying to tell her in different ways. He wants to feel less criticized by her, less judged, blah, blah, blah. And there's their only child who's been watching this and experiencing it and is now entering adolescence. And of course, that's the time that he wants to have more of a voice, needs to have more of a voice.
Yeah.
And he's starting to address that with the mother. And what I said to the family at one point, I said that I think your son, to the father, I think he's trying to show you how to fight.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I've seen versions of that many, many times
Yeah.
with the parent who is particularly conflict avoidant. And then a child sees that. I can't tell you how many families that I've seen with that in them, in
Yes.
them. They experience the pain of a conflict avoidant parent,
Hmm.
and they become sometimes overly, combative.
Yeah.
But it's an attempt to show, and it's not even conscious on the part
Right.
of the kid. But they're trying to show that parent how to have a voice.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen that it's a very common dynamic, and it's something that I want to say nobody knows about. Nobody outside the family therapy field really knows about.
Yeah.
Anywhere in if they see a kid like that, they label the kid oppositional disorder or
Right.
blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and a large part of that has to do, I'm sure I think you have mentioned, and it's the guilt in a family. It's so much easier to blame it on one person and not really dive into, what is going on as the whole unit. To have one person be responsible for the problem, it's just a lot easier. I find that, unfortunately, families, and I've seen a lot of even my friends who, like blame it on their kid, or they want to label, and I
Mm-hmm.
encourage, be careful with the labels, or
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier to own it. And I'm a high school teacher, so like,
Oh.
yeah, one of the things if I hear a label or something like that, I'm like, I don't go by labels. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how, if you say to the child, and I'm an art teacher, so it's a lot looser, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Mm-hmm.
say to the child, I don't go by labels, I'm going to accept you for totally who you are, all of a sudden they own they're, if they don't want to do something, they own it. They can give you another reason for it rather than like, oh, I have ADHD.
Exactly. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
It's empowering for them.
Yes, it's
It's
empowering.
humanizing. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People have a lot more power than they believe these days because of this very, you know, this disempowering theory, and
Definitely.
what is concerning to me, and what I guess I was putting forth in that article that you came across, is that this is now changing elsewhere. We are
Okay.
still in the US locked in to this because of the power of the pharmaceutical
Yeah.
companies are much more
Yeah.
prominent
Mm-hmm.
here. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the UK, they are reevaluating again, more of a
Mm-hmm.
social prescription, which,
Mm-hmm.
allows the therapist to look at the dynamics in a more, influential way, which is what I
Mm-hmm.
hope that you will continue,
Mm-hmm.
your journey on this path and making sure that more people
Mm-hmm.
are aware of this. Now, how is the book doing? It came out a couple of years ago, correct?
Yeah. So I don't really even know.
Okay.
Honestly, I mean, I'll tell you to say, I don't really they don't give me updates on the sales. I guess once a year I get an update. So
Yeah.
I don't really know. I can't say probably not enough. Books don't really sell, although there is an audio version. So, I've talked to many people who've read it. Obviously, I've had, families who come to see me who've read it, so
Yeah.
people are reading it. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm just so impressed by what you just said. I'm so glad as a teacher, that you say that. And I think it's true in Europe in general. I go, and my husband's an Austrian guy. We go to Austria, and I have a relationship with some. I have a place in France now. I came by that
Beautiful.
just accidentally and happily. And the social media is less important there. If you go to lunches and dinners, people are not on their phone.
Really?
They're not so reductionistic.
Yes.
They're more into, they can handle ambiguity a little bit
Yes.
more. And David Keith writes a lot about that. He talks about, so when people feel like they have a label, I have AD, I have this, ADHD, blah, 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 it reduces ambiguity. And most people experience ambiguity as painful,
Yes.
kind of when I have to sit with my emotions
Mm-hmm.
or when I have to experience my emotions. For us, for people who think like I do, family systems, our emotions are human.
Yes.
So it's are human, are beautiful, I want
Mm-hmm.
to say, are
Yes.
truthful, are honest.
Mm-hmm.
We, for the most part, people who have depression have earned it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not their own personal doing. It has, a response to a troubled context.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to really see our distress as interpersonal, it automatically depathologizes it.
Yes.
So automatically, so once you know that, young people who are dealing with, or, even grown-ups who are in a relationship and they might be a parent, a couple, an adult couple where somebody is experiencing depression, I know with 100% certainty that when I see the couple, if somebody calls me an adult with depression, I always see them in the relationship. And I know with 100% certainty that that depression will be a part of the relational dynamic.
Yes.
It belongs to the marriage. It doesn't
Right.
belong to and once you start to know that, and from my perspective, work with that,
Mm-hmm.
help people with that, there's an automatic depathologizing.
Yes.
There's an automatic humanizing.
Right.
I mean, I have a couple now where kind of the wife was always, it's a long story, was kind of always like the angry, and then she became an alcoholic. She was always kind of the one that everybody had to like tiptoe around and avoid and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband is actually a really great guy. But, she's sober now, long story, fairly recently, and working with the couple, it's become clear that the husband has, without meaning to, he's a lovely person, has inadvertently contributed to the wife seeing herself as wrong,
Yeah.
as wrong, that how she reacted was wrong, how she thought was wrong, that she was wrong.
Right.
And he didn't know that about himself. And we can't know that generally about ourselves. Often
Yes.
it takes sort of an outsider to look at the dynamics and sort of see what's
Right.
going on. But we do it, and my buddy talked about this, my co-author, kind of, we do it kind of as the coach of the team,
Mm.
not as the expert who comes in with, a superior knowledge, but we see where the team is struggling.
Yes.
We believe in the team. We know the team is doing their best, and we really want to help them to do better.
Yes.
Or my other metaphor is, in my other life, I'm also a jazz musician. I play. And
I listened to some of your music
oh no.
and your demo. It's wonderful. I actually really like jazz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
That's
just
embarrassing.
touch on that a little bit. I want you to finish your point, but I
Oh,
also want to get into your jazz consultations.
okay. Well, so
So,
it's related a little bit. So
oh,
we can
cool.
think about as the coach of the team, or I think of couples and families very much like a jazz band, which is
Yeah.
why I started to do my jazz consultation, because the same thing that makes a jazz band sound good makes a family sound good. So when I see a family or a couple, I feel a conductor of an orchestra, a conductor of a band. And
Mm.
you see that one instrument is too loud, another instrument is too soft. You
Mm.
see that they're not, hearing each other, that perhaps they're not allowing for enough autonomy with each
Yes.
individual voice. So you see the ways that of the energetic imbalances in the couple or family in the way that I would see it in a badly functioning, jazz group.
Yeah.
But
Right.
jazz is really a metaphor because when you see a jazz band playing really well, and I live in New York, so I see it all the time. My husband's a jazz bassist, excellent.
Yeah.
We play together. When you see them, it's the same ingredients that make a healthy family, that make for a healthy family. In other words, everybody, there's kind of a fundamental agreement about the rules, the chord
Hmm.
changes. This is kind of how we more or less do things, but yet there's maximum uh, invitation for individual expression, for
Mm.
individual autonomy.
Right.
We rooting for the other person to sound good. We
Yeah.
know that if they don't sound good, I don't sound good. So there's a rooting for each other. There's a feeling of maximum flexibility,
Mm.
autonomy, yet there's an undercurrent of cohesion.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's really, that's a metaphor for that same thing that makes a jazz band swing, makes a family swing.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great metaphor. So tell us a little bit about these jazz consultations that I
Oh,
came across. I think
so
it's just such a cool way to introduce like kind of some dynamism into a therapy session.
totally, totally. So, and I really feel like I should write my second book about it because as far as I know, I'm the only person crazy enough to have done anything like that.
I've never heard about it.
No,
Yeah.
nobody's done it, and it's really I did it over a period of about 10 years, I guess. A few times, I didn't do it a lot, maybe a few times a year. I live
Hmm.
in New York, so I got the absolutely best people.
Yeah.
This was when I was at the Mnuchin Center, and we had a one-way mirror. And what I did was I invited a couple or family that I had been seeing in therapy to come in for what I call the jazz consultation. And I would invite a couple of jazz musicians. And this being New York, and I'm kind of in the community myself, I got people who are at the top of their craft. And
Yeah.
when I invited them to come in to do the jazz consultation, I actually only had one person turn me down, but everybody else said yes. I asked people, the jazz musicians there were only a couple of criteria. One, they had to have been in a long-term committed relationship at some point in life. And that, of course, naturally narrows the pool of jazz musicians because many of them are married to their instruments. But
Right.
they had to know the agony of what it is to be in a relationship,
Yeah.
and they also had to be willing to, as we call it, play free. Not have chord changes, just to do the thing.
Hmm.
So I would be having a couple or family. The musicians would be watching on one side of the mirror, and then midway through the session, of course, the family knew they were coming in. Midway through the session, I would ask the musicians to come in and comment musically on their experience of the couple or family. So they would come in and they would play for just 5 minutes, something like that, whatever moved them about what was going on. And then they would go out, and the family and I would respond to the musical consultation.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. And the musicians would be watching on the other side of the mirror to the family response. And then
Oh,
after the family left, I would interview the musicians to find out what was happening for them,
yeah.
what they were thinking. I have it all on my DVDs.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was really, and everyone was different. Everyone was, as you can imagine,
Uh,
completely different.
this
I
is
can tell you about
wonderful.
one. I only had one experience, and it was, I don't know if it's so-called help. I don't know. It was always, I think one of the things about it, since really what we do as family therapists is we interrupt patterns.
Uh-huh.
Families come in rigidified, repetitive patterns.
Yes.
And our job as family therapists is to observe the patterns, understand them, and to interrupt them so something healthier can emerge. And that's
Yes.
the short way of saying it. And what the musicians did was non-verbally, and they interrupted the patterns, as you can imagine.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I'm an artist. So as an
Yes.
artist, I believe in the power of creativity to bring us all to that deeper human level. And it's so, I remember, I've been in and out of hospitals throughout my life because of this crazy system.
Right.
And it's funny because I remember the few times that just music in general is very therapeutic.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it seemed to at certain times when I was inside, and like I said, it's been over the course of 30 years, they seem to be more certain hospitals were more responsive to making sure that the arts, whether it be visual art, music, or
Hmm. Hmm.
even like
Hmm.
horticulture, was
Yep.
in the schedule for the patients. Some were
Hmm.
better than others, and then there seemed to, and I had returned to a couple different hospitals. They seem to start to do a lot less of that. Now, I don't
Oh.
know what's going on right now. I haven't been in the
Uh-huh.
hospital for a
Mm.
while,
Okay.
but the realization that I had was that this was more of a, oh, give them something to do rather
Uh-huh.
than, I don't know how therapeutic they felt it was, but
Uh-huh.
I always, being on the other side of it, knew the value of when it was missing, what it did.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
kind of just
Hmm.
leaves you alone. And there's this sense of, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so against like AI art or music or anything like this,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it takes it out of the human element.
And there's no soul.
There's no soul. Yep. Yep. So this, in it being something that kind of is recording or not recording, but like, well, actually, you do have a recording, but in it, in and of itself, it's being impressed upon the instrument as a response to what they're feeling and seeing when they were watching the dynamic of the family.
Correct.
It's
Correct.
like it is a real true recording of the family, you know, relationship, which I think is like remarkable to even like imagine.
It was. And just to say, as you can imagine, since all the couples and families that I see for the most part are in a lot of distress, the music was not usually beautiful.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I had one friend of mine who's a wonderful jazz guitarist. He's the kind of guy, he never wants anybody to feel bad. So he's done a couple consultations, and I told the musicians before, I said, don't worry about making the music sound good. I said, I'm responsible to the family. You're responsible
Right.
to me. I'm responsible for the family. Don't worry about it. And so 90% of the time, the musicians really played what they felt, which was often painful.
Yeah.
And I can tell you about one if you want to hear about it.
Yes, please.
It was often very painful. My lovely guitar playing friend, the two times that I had him as a jazz consultant, he always played something beautiful. He just couldn't stand to have people feel bad. He was like a beginning therapist, you know.
Right, right.
He just couldn't handle it. So it was so. And the second time, I think the couple said, "Well, that's not really us, but it sounds beautiful." They
They
recognized.
recognize the dishonesty.
I mean, they appreciated it, but they
Right.
didn't see themselves in it.
Yeah.
But it definitely made them feel better. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
so
wonderful thing that you're trying to incorporate so many different in creative ways of getting to the heart of the problem for these for your patients, which
yes,
is really wonderful because I think it's a testament to how many ways you can get in there and make a difference
yes,
outside of drugs.
yes.
Like,
Oh,
you know,
drugs
interferes. Yes.
interferes with
Yes.
with the potentially natural healing process. This is
Yes.
what I say to my family doctors, and they always think of me as, anti-medication. I said, it's not that I'm anti-medication, because they unfortunately really routinely prescribe antidepressants. It's really sad.
Yes.
But I said, it's not that I'm anti-medication as such. What I am is I'm anti the framework in which the medication is prescribed.
Yes.
And as personally, I do not want to do anything that reinforces a dysfunctional status quo.
Yes.
And if somebody comes with a depression or something and they're in a relationship or in a family or in life or they're, poor, they've got a, besieged by a lot of things, I do not want to reinforce the idea that there's something about this person that needs fixing.
Yes.
I don't want to do that. That
Right.
is reinforcing a problem that's already present.
Yes.
I want to, reframe that problem. I want to expand that person's idea about who they are. I don't want to
Yes.
reinforce the thing that there's something wrong with them. And that's, even though I know they mean well by the thing, it's just, it really continues and magnifies a problem that's there,
Absolutely.
you
And
know?
also, here's the bottom line. I mean, yes, I had this trauma, but if you allowed me to get through it, I could have handled it in a couple of years, maybe even a couple
Totally,
months. But they didn't even allow
totally.
me. It's like
Oh,
they got me stuck, and then for 30 years it was like I was trying to get off the stuff,
I
And it's
know.
not helpful in that way. And unfortunately, so many people go in that direction first. Do a lot of your patients come to you already medicated and they're still looking for an alternative path? And
Mhm.
that gets in the way a little, or is it that they chose you first in as a, alternative to medication, the traditional route?
hmm I see some people who are already, I see some people who love their antidepressants.
Right.
They just do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can say, and I don't really say anything about it. So, there's a final, the last story in our book is called Already Perfect, and it's in the chapter called Looking for What's Right.
Mm.
And it was a young woman who came to see me, and she had been on various kinds of antidepressants and other psychiatric medications since she was a teenager. And she came to see me when she was in her early 20s. She was an artist also, graduated from art school. And she came to see me. She had anorexia, and she was kind of the family scapegoat in some ways. She was the only girl. It's a long
Hmm.
story. It's talking about family trauma. Her mother had been in New Zealand. The mother had been sent to an orphanage. The mother grew up in an orphanage because the family was so poor they couldn't raise her. So
Hmm.
her own mother really never knew how to express her own feelings. There was no room for it. The
Yeah.
father was kind of the powerhouse of the family. Anyhow, she came to see me really identified with what was wrong with her. And she didn't come to deal with her antidepressant. She was referred by her family doctor, but she came for depression. And really, I just initially I found out about her antidepressants and stuff, but we didn't really talk about it. And then just really in the course of probably 3 or 4 visits, I think it was because I appreciated her humanity so much.
Hmm.
She was so intelligent, so thoughtful, in a deep way about what she had been through, about the family that she comes from, about her own, kind of uniqueness or idiosyncrasies, however you want to think about it. And I think I was so genuinely kind of appreciative of her, the wholeness of her,
Yeah.
that she ended up, just getting off her antidepressants. She just came one day and told me, by the way, this happened. And I just saw it and I was, okay, just be sure you talk with your doctor and blah, blah, blah. But I think in general, it was an outgrowth of
Yes.
my appreciation for her humanness.
Yes.
So for me, I have a very wide range of what is normal,
Right.
very wide. I don't even know. It's probably, I mean, it's all human. That's for 100% sure. It's all human,
Right. That's right.
all human. So,
Yeah.
so I don't, so that's the other thing is I'm not anxious. If I see somebody who is depressed, I don't think they need fixing. When I see a kid who is, I mean, there are many stories in the book. I tell one story of a kid, a 5-year-old who was so out of control. He was like broke his father's glasses. I mean, he was a tough little bruiser. He was tough. And the parents came in, they showed me a video of this and they were like afraid of their kid. He was only
Yeah.
5 and they were afraid of him because he was such a little powerhouse. And when they first came, I was like, I don't know if I could help. And then I saw the family and so I did, what we call an enactment. I asked the mother to do something that would frustrate the kid. So she took away his toy or asked him to relinquish his toy, and he started to have one of his major temper tantrums. And I asked the father to hold the child.
Mm.
And the father did. He gently held the child, and the kid was, I mean, this was a tough little buster. He did not give up. But the dynamic, the underlying dynamic was the mother was energetically fighting the father. The mother was worried about the father being too strong. So the mother, with her eyes, was trying to disarm the father. And
Mhm.
the kid felt on some level that my father is too strong.
Yeah.
And the father was giving this little child exactly what he needed. The father wasn't brutal. He wasn't cruel. But this little child, his own brakes didn't work. And so the father was being the kid's brakes, which is what the child was desperately asking for.
Yeah.
And so I kept saying in the session, I was talking about how wonderful daddy loves you. He's helping you. And I was doing this to the mother. I asked the mother what she was afraid of. She said, I'm worried that he's going to hurt him. I said, what are you worried about? He's giving this little man exactly what he needs. So I softened what the father was doing to the mother. Eventually the mother softened to the father.
Mm.
She said, Daddy loves you, Daddy is caring. This is how Daddy's showing you that he cares for you, and blah, blah. And eventually this little boy softened the father, joked with him a few times. He made the kid laugh. Then the father, took his arms away, and this little boy climbed up in his daddy's lap. And the mother looked at me and said, he never does that.
Oh.
And that was the family dynamic in a nutshell in the
Yeah.
office. That
Yeah.
that was, changing the energetic patterns that, where this kid needed the father to,
Yes.
contain his little
Yes.
self.
That's right.
And so that's an example of how
I
that.
mean, it's great how, you unpack those relationships right in the office.
Yes,
You could identify it, you
yes,
can wiggle your way in, you can make these
correct.
suggestions. I mean, it comes with your 30 years of experience
Yes.
and, but also it makes me want to call out for more people to give this a try rather than I'm saying professionals getting into the field rather than going the traditional way. Because I will share with you, my son's 19 now. He hasn't decided his major yet. But
Of
a
course.
lot of these people seem really interested in either psychology or psychiatry. Well, him and his friends who know
Wow.
me, who know I fight, the system and everything.
Wow.
And I'm thinking,
Hmm.
well, that's great. And there is a sense that some of them want to be in the system to help change it. But and this is, I guess, a question to your expertise. How realistic is it that if you get into something like psychiatry, that you can make a difference from within?
No,
It doesn't feel like they
no,
are
no,
budging.
no, no. Psychiatry is unfortunately firmly entrenched and increasingly every day more entrenched in the biological model. They don't
Yeah.
even, so what I'm talking about, and I'm somebody who has a lot of experience.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of people. I've helped a lot of people. I trained with a legendary guy in the field.
Hmm.
They don't know what I'm talking about. They
Right.
don't know. They're not really interested. Although I have to say, when I work with my family doctors, they're interested. I do have a couple of psychiatrists that I've had as students, and they were very interested. So, for certain people who are inclined in this direction, they are interested. A lot of what I've seen I have an older brother who's a psychiatrist, but he trained during kind of psychoanalytic times.
Yeah.
Alan Francis, of course, you know him. He's
Hmm.
very, now he's quite relationship oriented. I mean, he's a humanist, basically. But people who are training now, although they're firmly in the, the neurological, the neuroscience,
Yeah.
blah, blah, as it pertains to mental, health. It's just so distressing. But there are some people, even in psychiatry, who are interested. And I want to say this is not a happy way for most psychiatrists to work. Believe me, those that I have known who are really deeply in this model, it's not a happy way to work.
Hmm.
Most of, or I don't want to say most of them, I have met them. Many of them have greeted what I talk about with a sense of curiosity. Sometimes I want to say even a little bit of relief,
Hmm.
because once you start to see humans this way, it changes everything.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
hopeful, it's dynamic, it's depathologizing. We're not, you
Yes.
don't have to fix anybody. It's
Yes.
not really about that. And so, there was, I mean, when I see a family or couple, I am responsible for what happens in the office. That's on me.
Hmm.
Whatever happens, but I'm not responsible for, fixing them. I don't, I'm, like I said, I am like an orchestra director. I'm trying to coax some more lovely music out of what they're
Yeah.
already doing.
Right.
And so it's a gentle, there's humor in it. You can have, I mean, I have a lot of fun in my own, I enjoy it immensely. It's
Yeah.
a very, very enjoyable way to practice, mental health stuff. I've
Right.
never experienced burnout for a day in my life
Oh
because
my
I
gosh.
engage with people as humans.
Yes. Yes. And it's so crazy. I mean, it's 2026.
Mhm.
It sounds like this is like a basic like assumption that we should make that we should treat people like humans.
Especially
Especially if you're in a
now.
therapist situation, right? I mean, and yet we've come so far away from really what helps in if we are continuing to go down this road. And so for those people who and I want to phrase it like this because I want to, call out to those young people who are
Mhm.
interested because let's face it,
Yes.
this isn't going away. There will always be mental distress. We will always need people to help.
Sure,
And
sure.
the online AI phenomenon that can only do so
Mhm.
much. People want people to help
Yes.
them through these things.
Yeah.
So if somebody was to get into um, this, how would they begin? They would just go down a traditional psychology path, and then
Mhm.
is this
So
even being taught?
yes, it is a little,
Okay.
or at least let me put it this way. Not what I was very lucky in that I worked with, Sal Minuchin and those of us. I'm like a first generation family therapist. So
Yes.
I was really, really lucky that I came along professionally at the time that I did. So I want to say, for thinking about your son, and I actually have a client now who wants to become a therapist, and she's a true humanist, and she's going to be a fabulous therapist. And she is applying. So she's applying to like a master's in counseling.
Mm-hmm.
There are masters in counseling degrees. There are LMFT, so licensed marriage and family therapy. And
Okay.
the person, what's her name, Gottlieb, who wrote the book, Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody, which is kind of a humanistic thing, although it's stories of, they're all individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a humanistic, therapy for individuals. But she was at an LMFT program in California. So LMFT programs tend to be more relational,
Mm-hmm.
humanistic. You still get your degree. You get your license. You can practice psychotherapy.
Yes.
So that would be, the way to go. There's some social work programs that do that. I don't know what's happening now because I really don't know. Some of them I think are quite social justicey. So I don't know how clinically oriented they
Right.
are. Psychology degrees, I guess it would depend on the program.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, some programs feel like they have to be very research oriented. So you would look like with your son, people like that, they would look for a program that, you can see the curriculum and a lot that,
Yeah.
so that have humanistic, clinical,
Mm-hmm.
especially an emphasis on interpersonal. And
Right.
and actually, I just did a talk with AFTA, which is the American Family Therapy Association, and there were people from all over the country, and I was actually really impressed by them. And many of them were in training programs that were, and I don't know, I guess I could find out and get back to you, where
Hmm.
they were from.
Yeah.
But they were in, I think, mostly family therapy training programs, really all over the country. And I know,
Great.
especially in the West, they're more friendly toward family therapy training than they are on the East Coast. I
Great.
mean, that we do have it on the East Coast too, but California has some excellent programs. Just in general, they're not so medical,
Yeah.
generally speaking. So they're and because it was all young students, mostly in their 20s, and they were fabulous, really fabulous.
That's
So there
great.
is stuff going on. There are programs going on where you can really satisfy your need to learn good, humane, hopefully interpersonal psychotherapy. There are
Yes.
programs like that.
That's wonderful for anyone who is interested because we need good people in these fields.
Yeah,
It can't just be left behind because we all want to, abolish psychiatry.
yeah,
Like
it's not
it's
going to
not
happen.
right. People are still suffering.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then also you mentioned that there was a lot of research during the time that this was a globally expansive movement.
Correct.
How would you go about finding that research? Is it still research being done today on family therapy techniques?
The research now is, I mean, I shouldn't say because I'm not a researcher. I'm not really interested in it at the moment.
It's mostly about the biomedical model. So,
Yeah, I think so. And even family therapy research, I don't even know what's going on, but there are some classic books. My teacher wrote a book called Psychosomatic Families, which is he's got it's in it. He tells stories about Sal would see families with people with young women with anorexia. It was all women,
mm,
and how Sal developed his method of working with anorexic, young people, is he had the family eat together, and he would watch as the family shared a meal, and he would see the ineptitude, if I can say that, on the part of the parents as they tried to get their young person to eat.
interesting.
And so he developed a model, and I've seen, many families with a young anorexic person, and I kind of borrow from that a little bit.
Hmm.
So that was a whole thing of research that he did there. So that's one. There's also a book called The Interactional View, which is a
Hmm.
lot of research that was done in Palo Alto.
Hmm.
So I got some books that you might enjoy.
Oh, great, great,
Uh, and these are some of it is research. So this is a research book. This was done in the 70s called Change.
beautiful,
I don't know if it's too theoretical, but
great,
this is Whitaker's Family Crucible, which I highly recommend. It's
great,
written for lay people. And this is not research, this is just stories. This is about kids, so called acting out kids by
great.
my buddy. And there are a million of them. But so, in my view, all the good research, the real research about interpersonal dynamics was done. It still exists, it's still great.
Well, see, that's what's great to know that it's there. It can be looked at because we
Yeah,
know so much biomedical of the biomedical research that was invested in for the last 30 years did
right.
not give us what we wanted.
No.
It's been a failure, really. It's proven that it doesn't work, but they keep at it. I guess
You
that's
know,
where money continues to come in.
Anne Harrington's book,
Oh,
uh, Psychiatry is Futile,
like Mind
Futile Search.
Fixers, I think.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
beautiful book.
And she's saying exactly what you said, that
Yeah.
all the money is poured in and they still have not found a biological reason
Yes.
for mental illness. But
Yes.
that's where the money is.
That's it. And I hope people will continue to see that that's really what is driving it. It's not about healing. And that is one of the problems with the biomedical model. What you're proving to me, and in hearing some of these descriptions of families that you put in
Mm-hmm.
your articles that I looked at, what it shows is that you can heal from mental illness. And that's
Definitely.
what the problem was with me because, I was one of the the kind of superstars in my family, but they didn't
Mm-hmm.
like that so much. You know what I mean? So again, became a scapegoat. But the thing that I couldn't understand was that they were so interested, and everyone around me, and again, it's because they kind of lean towards an authoritative tone
Mm-hmm.
that trust. They trust
Mm-hmm.
doctors, you know?
Mm, yes.
And the doctor would say, well, this is what's wrong with your kid. And they had to believe it. It was almost like an ethical thing. They were not going to
Mm-hmm.
fight back against a doctor who knows more than they do. And
Totally.
it impresses upon them this idea that if there is something wrong with your brain, there's no way that you can change that.
Right, right,
There is no healing on the horizon. This is
right.
a very nihilistic
Mm-hmm.
view
Mm-hmm.
of life. And to me, it's one of the problems with even the youth of today who buy into this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a
Mm-hmm.
big common theme
Totally.
in a lot of their social media, nihilism. Well,
Totally.
if they feel like there's nothing to really live for, because they got this
Totally.
problem, well,
Oh God, it's so heartbreaking. The
it
other thing
is.
is that what they're not talking about is our brain follows our feelings.
Ah,
Our brain follows our feelings. So, unless you have dementia or, disease, really demonstrable, biological disruption of the thing. Other than that, if I go out and it's a beautiful sunny day and I feel joyous, my brain will show that.
yes,
If
yes,
I'm feeling
yes,
sad, something happened, my dog died, my brain will show that.
yes,
So, that thing has gotten all turned around.
yes,
If I eat to have a delicious meal, my brain will show that,
yes,
So that's what that thing has gotten turned upside down, that somehow our
absolutely.
brain determines our feelings. No, our feelings determine our brain.
Well, it's so wonderful. I love this because that to me was always what I believed. I felt like, well, if this was to be seen, you can see what I'm experiencing
Exactly.
because my brain is housing either the what's going on, biochemically with my feelings, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean it's causation. And
Right.
that is so much of the problem, this correlative versus causation. And
Totally.
not only that, none of us have received these tests. There are no
No,
biological
there no there's
tests.
no, there's no test. It's not
There's
like
no seeing
diabetes.
anything, really,
Right,
right?
right, right. That well, the pharmaceutical industry has tried to, and as somebody good to read about this is a guy named Arthur Kleinman who talked about disease and illness. But
Mm,
what has happened? So disease meaning like a disruption of diabetes, for example. You can see it on a test. You can a quantifiable disruption in the biological system.
yes,
Depression
yes,
is where somebody feels distressed, they're upset, but you can't measure it. You can't see it on a test. And
yes,
so, what the pharmaceutical industry has done has rebranded illness as if it's disease. So now, when you
yes,
go to the doctor, sometimes they have depression scales, which is designed by Pfizer, and it's designed to quantify, and it's that thing that you're talking about, that kind
yes,
of the idea that you can quantify and measure and treat as if it's a disease. And yeah, it's really and I had just a case like that, just very briefly, long story. Parents who the kid is cut off from them, won't talk to them, and now they want to reconnect with him. But anyhow, this child saw every kind of psychiatrist as a young person. He had shock treatments, one thing after another. And every time they took him to a psychiatrist, they looked at the kid's depression, and just like you're talking about, your kid is sick.
mm,
And I've seen some of the letters from who's now a young man. I've seen the parents, and I understand the child's depression. I know what this young person was going through. This was another case where the father was completely withdrawn. In
mm,
this particular case, the mother didn't really hear anything she didn't want to hear. This young
mm,
man was trying to have a voice. This young man also became the mother's husband. The father was absent. He was a
mm,
doctor. So he carried the mother's pain.
right.
Long story, and I saw this just by seeing the parents
Yeah.
and understanding. So if this family or Laura Delano's family had come to see me or another person who works like me, who's training,
Right.
thinks like me,
Right.
it would be completely different story. Or you,
Yes.
when you were a
Yes.
completely different story.
Yes.
Completely, I would see your parents' pain. I would empathize with it. I would try,
Yes.
and the family is the patient. And
Right.
right from from day one, the family is the patient. And
Yeah.
compassionate and respectful and challenging,
Yes. Yes.
all of that.
Yeah.
But not to the kid for the most part. Occasionally, but yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I have to challenge the family, Pat, and I see the family's pain. I see what they're going through. I see they're not able to get to it. They're not able to talk about it.
Yeah.
They're not able to. I see the kid is trying to help, which is
Yes.
it's a little known. It's something that very few people know about. For the most part, when a kid is, defiant or whatever, they're trying to help.
Yeah.
Laura Delano was trying to help.
Yeah.
She saw a dysfunctional pattern. She was trying to help.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a completely different framing than your kid is sick.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the reframing, the approach, the humanist approach, bringing everything back down into feelings are good because they speak about what's going on inside
Mm-hmm.
us, our
Mm-hmm.
hearts, our
Mm-hmm.
brains. I have been so, despondent over what I guess Western society is messaging with
Right.
letting everybody know that it's okay. It's not okay to, have feelings, firstly.
Right.
And the only way to go about being normal is to just have a pill that helps you work. Like
Right.
that was the big thing that came about that I couldn't work at first. And they were just like, oh my God, because I didn't fit into the capitalistic model, like a cog in a machine. And I said, this is not mental
Uh-huh.
illness. I would stop saying the words mental illness. There's nothing to do with mental, but I couldn't fight back because I was
Right.
stimulated with the
You
medication
had no
being put
power.
me
You
on.
had no
Yeah, no
power.
power. Right. Right. And that is, going back to this idea of like, is psychiatry also like a mechanism of social control, because it's not really providing for the person the healing path.
Mhm.
So it's so there's so many facets to this, but I am so thankful to have this refreshing approach. I mean, it almost feels like I went back listening to you. I feel like I went back in time and kind of I'm rethinking it through. Like as you say, if I had sat with you early on, there was no, menu on the table. Like, which kind of therapy would you like? I had
Right.
only one way in and through, which was how do I get to the other side of this hospital? I got to go by what they say.
Right.
And, unfortunately, a lot of us do tend to become revolving door patients
Mm-hmm.
because once you're in, your body gets adapted, adapts to these medications. And then it's
Totally.
really about getting off them, and how
Totally.
long that takes. So I just thank you for the work you do. I am going to put all of those references that you just nicely
Mm-hmm.
showed us
Mm-hmm.
in the show notes. And I also want you to give a shout out to your website and any
Mm-hmm.
social media handle that you might
Not really. I
use.
did it for a while. I'll tell you in a second. I just want to say how much I appreciate what you're doing.
Oh,
And I want
thank
to
you.
say, if I can just be so bold as to say this, you're such a healthy person.
Oh,
Honestly,
thank
I just
you.
must say that. And
Thank you.
I really hope that your podcast is able to help a lot of people.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you.
just so much appreciate what you're doing. I can't even tell you, this is a very nourishing conversation for
Oh,
me,
oh,
to be able to have this, kind of with a shared sensibility about,
yeah,
what's going on, these days and all that stuff. And I think all we can do is to keep doing what we're doing, honestly.
absolutely.
There's not, we can't change psychiatry. And I want to say, just as somebody who knows a lot of psychiatrists and stuff, most of them are not evil people, honestly.
Right,
This is what
right,
they know. This is what they're
right.
being taught,
Yes,
and they
yes,
don't know what you're talking about, what I'm
yeah,
talking about. They don't know.
right.
And so it's not really the individuals, it's the system that is so
Yes,
corrupt, if I could say that.
yes.
It's so corrupt but there's not that much that we can do about it except for really stay true to what we know, what we believe. What you're doing is just
Yeah.
fantastic with the
Yeah.
with your podcast. Anything I can do to promote it. Oh, as to my social, I did about a year ago, I was doing some Instagram stuff and TikTok. I just doing little videos. I mean, you can see it there, but I stopped doing it. Actually, I stopped doing it when Trump was elected. I don't even know why. I think I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things changed once
Right,
that happened.
exactly. So I don't really, eventually I might go back to doing it, but right now I'm going to write for Mad in America once in a while. I do have a website that I used to do with Dave Keith. I don't really
Mhm.
write in it too much, but it's got a lot of good stuff, and it's called mosthuman.net.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your own website as well as Amy Begel, right,
Yes,
.com?
yes. That kind of is just, there's not really anything on it except for, I
If
don't even
people
know.
want to get in touch with you.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Yeah,
correct,
absolutely. You could
correct,
have the
correct,
contact information is there. And if you're interested in
correct,
taking up any kind of wonderful family therapy with
correct,
Amy, that is the way to go because
correct.
yes, this just has filled me too with a lot of like just good feeling, like to know
Yeah,
that you're right. You can only keep going down the path with an open eyes and
totally,
sharing with everyone who is willing to hear.
totally.
It's been a long road for me personally with
Mm-hmm.
forgiving
Sure.
psychiatrists
Yeah,
because, I realize so many of them got into this to help people,
totally,
and they really care about that. And I'm
totally,
realizing that more from the young people who are going into it. I'm like, yeah,
totally,
these are good kids.
totally.
And it's just unfortunate that it's the
It's
academic,
the model they're being taught.
it's the model. So,
Yep.
hopefully if people like you keep doing what you're
And
doing
you,
and
and
me,
you.
right?
Yep, yep.
It will contain more resonance as time continues. And that's just like how things go. It takes a long time when lies are told for the purpose of profit.
Totally, totally.
And hurting people along the way. It can't last forever, those ideas, but hopefully we can save enough of the professionals within to,
Mm-hmm.
help maybe with the deprescribing movement and
Mm-hmm.
also just like more of a return to the soul.
100%,
Yeah.
hundred
So
percent, 100%.
so thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you, Jen. This was really, really just a wonderful, like I said, nourishing, rich, enjoyable, fun conversation. Really, really great.
Well, thank you. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very excited to hear what you have to say because it is very inspiring what you do. Thank you.
Great, great. And keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Not As Crazy As You Think. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, mental health is attainable for anyone, especially those labeled with mental illness. Until next time, peace out.